Imagine a prize so rare, so coveted, that a king offered a fortune, a true ransom for its possession. Yet, for the humble farmer at the heart of our story, that prize was nothing more than a stubborn, ordinary mule, and his reply an absolute, bewildering refusal that baffled the entire world. This seemingly idiotic choice is where the greatest lesson begins. Soon after this strange refusal, the creature vanished, slipping away into the night. When it finally returned, it didn't bring fortune, it brought violence. The resulting chaos left the farmer's only son not just harmed, but crippled, with a brutal, unforgiving broken leg. The neighbors shook their heads, seeing only ruin, the lost wealth, the returned curse, the crippled heir. Yet, it was precisely these two profound misfortunes, the financial loss and the physical injury, that acted as an invisible shield. Because when the brutal, merciless drums of an unforgiving war began to sound, and the army swept through the region gathering every able-bodied youth, they passed over the farmer's home, leaving the injured son untouched and safe. If you find wisdom in tales that expose the hidden mechanics of fate, ensure you join our community by subscribing, and mark this discovery with a sign of fortune's favor. This is the enduring, humbling proof that absolutely everything holds a purpose we cannot immediately grasp, and that what appears to be a crippling curse in the harsh light of the morning sun can, in the fullness of time, unfurl into an undeniable, necessary blessing. Many years ago, nestled in a fertile valley where the mountains rose sharply and crystal rivers threaded the landscape, there lay a small farming settlement. Here, on his small plot of land, lived Don Elias. He was a man of about 45 years, his face etched by the sun, his hands calloused and hardened by decades of working the rich, dark earth. Don Elias was far from wealthy. He possessed just enough to keep food on the table. But unlike many in the village, he carried a deep, quiet serenity, an unhurried smile that suggested nothing troubled him for long. The neighbors called him poor, but Don Elias felt himself profoundly blessed. His small family consisted of his son, Mateo, a robust young man full of vigor and simple dreams, and an animal that was truly part of their household, a magnificent black mule named Mauro. Mauro was no ordinary beast of burden. His dark eyes held a distinct, almost knowing intelligence, as if ancient wisdom resided within him. His sleek black coat shone under the sun, and his majestic bearing commanded attention without seeking it. He was strong, powerful as the earth itself, tireless during the longest working days, yet gentle and loyal to those who treated him with respect. What truly set Mauro apart was his uncanny understanding. He seemed to grasp Don Elias's and Mateo's intentions before a word was spoken. A simple gesture, a firm look, and Mauro obeyed instantly, as if a secret language existed only between them. Mateo had literally grown up by the mule's side, often resting on Mauro's warm coat in the quiet evenings, whispering his hopes and secrets as if the animal were a silent, trustworthy confidant. For father and son, Mauro was irreplaceable. He represented not just labor, but connection, effort, and deep gratitude. He was a living reminder that true richness is not measured in coins, but in the companionship that supports the soul when life becomes heavy. In time, the fame of the exceptional mule traveled across the region, eventually reaching the ears of a wealthy landowner from a distant province. One afternoon, this finquero arrived in the small village, mounted on a glistening thoroughbred and dressed in silks that starkly contrasted with the simple linen of the farmers. The news of his arrival spread instantly. Everyone knew a man of such wealth did not visit by accident. He had come with one explicit purpose: to see the legendary Mauro and acquire him. The rich man quickly found Don Elias buying provisions in the village square, Mauro standing patiently beside him, a pillar of quiet strength guarding his humble master. The landowner was stunned. He had never witnessed an animal so powerful and so perfectly cared for. "That mule is worth pure gold," the rich man declared, admiration thick in his voice. Without hesitation, right there in front of the assembled villagers, he offered Don Elias an enormous sum of money, a fortune large enough to allow the peasant to cease working for years. Silence fell over the square as everyone waited. To their astonishment, Don Elias smiled serenely. "Sir," he replied calmly, "I thank you for your generosity, but this mule is not for sale. Morrow is woven into the fabric of our lives. I could never exchange him for money." The murmurs began immediately. "The old fool is mad," whispered one villager. "He rejected a lifetime of comfort for a simple animal." Another added, "He is a simpleton. He will remain poor until the day he dies." Don Elias, however, carried on with his day, unperturbed. Then, one early morning, just as the roosters were starting their chorus, Mateo went to the stable to prepare morrow for the fields and found it empty. His heart slammed against his ribs. He called Morrow's name again and again, but the mule had vanished. Mateo raced across the farm, checking fences and searching the dusty trails, but the absence of the great animal filled the air with a terrible, heavy silence. He spent the entire day searching, following fading hoof prints and questioning neighbors, until nightfall brought him back, exhausted and deeply unsettled with no answers. Mateo, his eyes burning with frustration, confronted his father. "Father, how can you be so calm? We have lost the most valuable thing we possessed." Don Elias's voice remained quiet and steady. "Son, do not rush the heart. Do not call this good or bad so quickly. Time alone will reveal the true meaning of this loss." Mateo listened in bewildered silence, unable to comprehend such stoicism. The next day, father and son continued their search in the village, hoping someone had seen the black mule. As the news of the loss spread, the cruel comments escalated. "See, that's what happens when you refuse good fortune. He deserved to lose everything. He was probably stolen. What a total disgrace." Mateo dropped his gaze, tears of helplessness pricking his eyes. The pain of the loss was a burning weight in his chest. But Don Elias, instead of allowing rage or shame to consume him, stood in quiet dignity. He addressed the crowd. "If God has permitted this, it is because there is a purpose we do not yet understand. Do not rush your judgment. What seems like a deep misfortune today may reveal itself as a great blessing tomorrow. Who are we to know more than the Creator?" His simple words surprised many. Some fell silent, others sneered with open mockery. But on Don Elias's face, there was no trace of doubt or fear. While the villagers' laughter sought to pierce his heart with thorns, he remained as serene as a deeply rooted tree that will not break even when the fiercest winds blow. "You are a fool, Elias. You lost the only true value in your life and you still speak of purpose. What you have is sheer misfortune, nothing more. Look at him. Misery has driven him mad and his son is heartbroken. You should have sold the mule to the rich man. Now you have neither beast nor money." The voices rose with condescending superiority, intending to humiliate him and make him feel small. Yet, Don Elias refused to be pulled down by the tide of their contempt. His composure was a powerful silence, shouting louder than their taunts, a powerful reminder that true faith does not rely on possessions, but on the strength of the soul. "Life does not always show us its truth in the moment, my friends," he continued, placing a calm hand on Mateo's shoulder. "One day we believe we have lost everything, and the next, we realize that the loss was, in fact, a gift in disguise. Do not judge life merely by what your eyes can see today. Look with patience, for time is the only thing that truly knows how to separate the good from the bad." Mateo gazed at his father with awe. His father spoke with such profound peace that it was impossible not to feel it. In the depth of his own sadness, Mateo began to realize that his father's calm was not indifference, but pure, unwavering faith. A faith that did not depend on favorable circumstances, but on the certainty that nothing happens without reason. Days of heavy uncertainty passed. Then, one morning at the break of dawn, as the sun began to paint the mountains gold, Matteo witnessed an unbelievable sight. Mauro came running back, and following closely behind him were a full dozen wild, majestic mules. Matteo shouted with excitement, "Father, look, Mauro is back. And not only is he back, he has brought us more animals." Within hours, the news had spread. The entire village trekked to Don Elias's farm to see the spectacle. The very people who had criticized Don Elias now praised him. What incredible luck this man has. He is truly blessed. His poverty is surely over. But Don Elias, devoid of pride or excessive emotion, simply responded, "Perhaps the mule went searching for his herd and has returned with them. Let us not call this fortune when we still do not understand its full meaning." Matteo, however, was overcome with joy. He embraced Mauro, stroking his mane, as if reunited with a long-lost brother. The other mules kept a wary distance, wild and untamed, but they remained near the farm. The young man smiled with renewed hope, convinced this was a sign from heaven. He noticed, though, that his father remained perfectly serene, refusing to let the emotion dominate him. For Matteo, it was the return of happiness. For Don Elias, perhaps, it was merely a new trial. The next morning, Matteo woke brimming with determination. He ran to the pasture where Mauro grazed alongside the new herd. From the fence line, he watched them, believing these powerful animals were the key to a better future for their farm. But when he tried to approach, the mules bolted, snorting, kicking the earth, and viewing his every movement with intense suspicion. They raised an invisible wall between themselves and the young man. Matteo felt a spike of frustration, but seeing Mauro grazing quietly, he realized trust was not earned in a day. He made a solemn decision. He would dedicate all his strength and patience to domesticating these wild hearts, determined to turn these skittish, fierce animals into working companions. Matteo began his long, arduous process. He spent entire days in the pasture, approaching slowly, speaking to them in soft tones, observing every reaction to earn their confidence. Days stretched into weeks and weeks into months of relentless effort under the scorching sun and sudden rains. Often he finished the day exhausted, his hands raw and his body aching, yet his spirit never broke. Little by little, the mules that had once viewed him with suspicion began to tolerate his presence, eventually recognizing him not as a stranger, but as a respected companion. But then, disaster struck. One afternoon, while trying to mount the wildest and strongest of the new mules, the animal bucked violently. Matteo was thrown hard to the ground and his legs snapped beneath him. The pain was unbearable, and as if misfortune attracted poisonous tongues, several villagers passing by witnessed the scene. These were the same people who had mocked him when Mauro was lost. They began to murmur cruelly again. "See, those mules brought only trouble, now his son is crippled." Tears of thick, hot anguish rolled down Matteo's face as he gritted his teeth. "Father," he gasped through sobs, "do not tell me this is not bad now. Look what has happened to me." Don Elias arrived instantly, kneeling on the dirt beside him. He held his son's injured leg firmly, his gaze steady. In a low voice that seemed to cradle the pain, he replied, "Son, do not yet call this bad. Time has mysterious ways of showing us its truth." Immediately, the critics began hurling their words like arrows against Don Elias's heart. "And now what, Elias? Where is the purpose you spoke of when you lost the mule? Look at you. Your son is broken on the ground. What kind of blessing is this?" Don Elias looked at them without agitation, with the serenity of a man who does not need to defend himself against the world's noise. His voice was firm, yet charged with peace. Purpose is not always understood in the moment, nor does pain signify God's absence. Do not call this a tragedy before it has finished revealing itself. Time will reveal if this is loss or if it is instruction. He did not argue. He tore a strip of canvas, improvised a splint with two straight branches, and while Matteo gasped in pain, he carefully immobilized the leg. He leaned in and whispered, "Do not curse the pain, Matteo. Sometimes it is the most demanding teacher. If God permitted it, He will also give us the strength to endure it." Matteo looked up, his eyes glazed with distress. "And if I can never work again, Father?" "Of course you will work again, son," Don Elias assured him. "Sometimes God stops us so He can teach us how to walk a different path. You do not understand now, but do not rush your judgment. Be thankful for life, even when it hurts. The rest, leave in the hands of the Almighty." The wind rustled the grass in the pasture like an ancient hand. The mules watched silently from a distance, and in the midst of the agony, Don Elias's voice hung in the air like a promise that required no immediate proof. The true meaning of that day was yet to be completed. Only 2 weeks after Matteo's accident, the entire country descended into war. The government began an immediate and brutal mobilization, forcibly recruiting every able-bodied young man in the country for the front lines. No one could escape the mandate. When the soldiers reached the village, they went farm by farm, snatching the young men from their homes. When they arrived at Don Elias's humble dwelling, they found Matteo confined, his leg still in a rigid splint. They could not take him. Meanwhile, countless other young men were ripped from their families, and tragically, most would never return. The families wept, inconsolable. The air of the village filled with desperate lamentation, a river of grief that found no outlet. Mothers clung to the empty clothes of their sons. Fathers stared blankly at the horizon, unable to accept the void left by the absence. The sound of sobs mingled with the silence of the empty houses, which seemed to scream the names of those who would not be coming back. Those who had once mocked Don Elias now looked at him with profoundly different eyes. The very military that stole their children away was forced to leave Matteo behind because his broken leg rooted him firmly in his home. It was then they finally grasped the truth they had previously scorned. The trial of Don Elias and his son, which had seemed like an absolute calamity, had truly been for their ultimate good. Between sobs, their voices cracking, they confessed, "We pointed fingers at you. We laughed at your misfortune, but look now. Your son is alive while ours have gone, and we do not know if we will ever see them again." His words were truth itself. Everything that happens is permitted by the Creator, even when it appears unbearably unjust in the moment. The silence that followed was not one of mockery, but of deep respect. Many understood that the faith of that simple farmer had seen far beyond their own hasty judgments, and that what they had called loss was, in fact, an incredible preservation. Don Elias, his eyes calm and his voice unwavering, looked at Matteo. "Do you see, son? What seemed like a terrible disgrace ultimately became your salvation. Losing Mauro was painful, but he returned with more. Breaking your leg caused you great suffering, but it saved you from this war. This is life. We never know the real meaning of anything until time reveals it." Matteo, tears welling in his eyes, spoke with a tight throat. "Father, now I truly understand. I cursed the day the mule threw me and broke my leg. I thought my life was ruined, but if it hadn't been for that pain, I would not be here with you today. My friends were taken, and many will not return." Don Elias gently placed a hand on his son's shoulder, continuing with tenderness but a force that penetrated the soul. "My son, that is why I told you never to call something bad until its ending has shown itself. The Creator writes with lines that we cannot decipher at the beginning. He sees farther than our eyes can reach and knows more than our heart can bear. Everything He allows for an ultimate purpose." Matteo lowered his head, deeply moved. "Forgive me, Father. I doubted your words, I doubted your faith, but now I see you were right. God never abandoned us. He was merely guiding us along a path I could not understand. Don Elias held him in a tight, protective embrace, his voice dropping to a heartfelt whisper, heavy with profound solemnity. Never allow this moment to escape your memory, Mateo. The true measure of a life well lived is not found in the inventory of what we accumulate or the anguish of what we forfeit, but solely in the unwavering trust we surrender to the Creator. Understand the nature of struggle. That sharp sorrow which pierces your soul today may well be the rugged foundation that ensures your survival tomorrow. And conversely, that radiant comfort you perceive as a flawless blessing today may soon become the very crucible designed to refine and test your spirit. Therefore, anchor your soul in gratitude during every season, in hardship and abundance alike, for you must know, deep within your core, that absolutely everything that touches your path is guided by a grand and sacred purpose. In that precise, suspended moment, the profound silence of the countryside descended, not as a mere absence of noise, but as a weighty, palpable presence, thick with unexpected, potent meaning. Instantly, a soft, pervasive wind materialized, sighing gently through the upper canopy. This sound was more than a caress of the foliage. It felt like the very breath of the world itself, validating the ancient, eternal truths that perpetually hover, suspended deep within the vast atmosphere. It was within that quiet, defining solitude that the irreversible transformation finally took hold, gripping Mateo's very essence. If you find yourself drawn to these moments of profound realization, please hit that subscribe button to follow the journey. Here, a bedrock of fierce, new resilience was meticulously forged, a deep, fundamental trust that utterly refused to acknowledge the fickle, shifting evidence presented by his eyes, choosing instead to anchor itself fiercely to an unwavering certainty he had, at last, learned to embrace wholly and implicitly.